The town of Blackwood was a scar on the map. My family and I had moved there for my dad's new job, a last-ditch effort to keep a crumbling family together. It was the kind of place where the silence felt heavy, and the shadows seemed to have teeth. I was 16, and I, Ethan, felt the town's breath on my neck the moment we pulled in. But the true terror didn't begin with the whispers of the locals or the way the trees twisted into skeletal fingers against the perpetually grey sky. It began with my mother's cough. It started as a harmless tickle in her throat, a persistent nuisance she'd brush off with a smile. Within a week, it had become a wet, guttural rasp that shook her entire body. She was pale, feverish, and confused, her eyes wide with a fear I couldn't understand. The local doctor, a man with hands that trembled too much, took one look at her and said, "She needs to be at St.Jude's. Now." My dad, a pragmatic man who trusted logic over folklore, balked. He'd heard the stories, of course. Everyone in Blackwood had. Jude's Memorial Hospital was a crumbling relic on the edge of town, infamous for a century of bizarre medical malpractice, a fire that claimed half the staff, and the screams that locals swore echoed from its upper floors on windless nights. It wasn't just haunted, it was a place where people went to be forgotten. But the doctor was insistent, and my mother's labored breathing left us with no choice. The hospital was worse than the rumors. The facade was stained with what looked like ancient blood, and the air inside was thick with the scent of disinfectant mixed with something sickly sweet and rotten, like decaying flowers. The fluorescent lights flickered erratically, casting long, dancing shadows that looked like grasping hands. My mother was whisked away to a room on the 6th floor, and my dad was told to wait in a lounge that smelled of mold and stale coffee. I couldn't sit still. The hospital felt like a living thing, its walls groaning, its vents whispering. Every few minutes, I'd swear I saw a figure pass at the end of the long hallway, a quick, fleeting shape that would vanish before I could get a good look. A cold dread seeped into my bones. After what felt like an eternity, a nurse emerged to give us an update. Her name tag read Evelyn. She was unnervingly placid, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. She explained that my mom's condition was stable but required further observation. She then, without a single change in her expression, added, and a word of advice. "Don't go up. Don't go to the rooftop. The wind up there, it isn't healthy." She turned and left, her footsteps silent on the linoleum floor. But the message resonated deep in my gut. My dad dismissed it as a bizarre safety warning, but my mind latched onto it. The rooftop. The one place in this whole wretched building that was specifically forbidden. Hours bled into night. Dad finally fell asleep in a hard plastic chair, his face slack with exhaustion and worry. But I was wide awake, compelled by a force I couldn't name. The nurse's warning echoed in my head. "Don't go up. The wind isn't healthy." My fear was real, but a new, dangerous curiosity had taken hold. I had to know what was up there. I had to know what was making the wind unhealthy. I tiptoed past the sleeping night staff, found the stairwell, and began to climb. The air grew colder with each step, the silence deeper. The 6th floor, where my mother lay, was the last floor with rooms. The 7th was just a maintenance level. I pushed past a heavy door that led to a narrow, final flight of stairs. Above, I saw a sliver of pale moonlight seeping through the crack of a locked door. I put my shoulder into it, once, twice. The old wood splintered. The door groaned open, revealing the rooftop. A blast of cold, clean air hit me, a welcome relief from the stale rot of the hospital. The moon was full, illuminating the city below in an eerie, silver light. I walked to the edge, looking out at the sprawling, desolate town of Blackwood. And that's when I saw her. She was standing at the far end of the roof, her back to me. Her hair, long and black, cascaded down her back like a waterfall. She wore a simple white hospital gown, and she didn't seem to notice me at all. Her stillness was profound, unnatural, yet I felt a strange and tragic pull to her. I called out, my voice a shaky whisper. "Hello. Are you okay?" She didn't respond. Slowly, she turned her head, her eyes fixed on me. They were a startling, milky white, reflecting the moonlight without a pupil or an iris. A soft, chilling smile spread across her face. Then, she raised a hand, and with a long, impossibly slender finger, she pointed. Not at me, not at the city. She pointed down. I followed the line of her finger, and my blood ran cold. She was pointing at the 6th floor window. My mother's room. I scrambled down the stairs, the sound of my own ragged breathing echoing in the cold, cavernous stairwell. The girl's image, her pale face and milky white eyes, was seared into my mind. Her finger had pointed to my mother's window. I didn't know what it meant, but the ice that had run through my veins had now turned to a panicked fire. I burst into the 6th floor hallway, my heart hammering against my ribs. The corridor was silent, the dancing shadows now seeming to hold their breath. I crept toward my mother's room, 613, the numbers on the door looking like a curse. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly, my eyes darting into the darkness. The room was still. My mother was asleep in the bed, the blankets pulled up to her chin. A faint, silver light from the moon streamed through the window, illuminating her face. She looked peaceful, but something was wrong. The air in the room was colder than it should have been. I crept to her bedside, leaning in to listen for the sound of her breathing. It was slow, shallow, and unnaturally quiet. Too quiet. My eyes drifted to the window, the very one the girl had pointed at. The glass was beaded with condensation, and something was scratched into the fogged pane. A name. Mireia. I jumped back with a gasp, my heart leaping into my throat. That's when I heard it, a whisper, thin as a spider's silk, right behind me. "He's not a healer," the voice breathed. It was soft, melancholic, and full of a profound sadness. I whipped around. No one was there. But the whisper was so close, it felt like a ghost had just kissed my ear. "He's a monster," the voice continued. "And he's taking her, bit by bit." I knew, somehow, that it was her. Mireia. My blood ran cold, but the strange, tragic pull I had felt on the rooftop returned, a current of sympathy in a sea of dread. Who are you?" I whispered into the empty air. "They called me Mireia," the voice replied, the sound coming from the small, tarnished mirror on the dresser. I stared into it. My own face stared back, but for a split second, a pale, solemn face with milky white eyes flickered over my reflection. "The hospital isn't sick," Mireia said. "The hospital is a cage. He locked us all in here. He took our hope, our life. He's taking your mother's, too." My mother's breathing seemed to grow fainter. I felt a surge of panic. "Who are you talking about? Who locked you in?" "The doctor," Mireia's voice hissed, a sudden sharpness cutting through her sadness. "The first doctor. Before they sealed off the lower levels." She was guiding me now, her words painting a horrifying picture of a doctor who had used the hospital for his own twisted experiments, trapping spirits within its walls. She told me to go to the basement, to a long-forgotten ward. "Find his office. Find the book," she urged. "It's the only way." I knew it was insane. I was talking to a ghost in a haunted hospital. But a part of me, the part that had felt that pull on the rooftop, felt an unwavering trust in her. She was a victim, not a monster. I found my way to a dusty service elevator and took it down to the ground floor. From there, I located a heavy, rusted metal door, hidden behind a stack of old medical charts. A faded sign on the door read B2, restricted access. With Mireia's whispers guiding my every move, I found an old, rusty key tucked into a crevice in the wall and opened the door. The air that greeted me was dead. It smelled of metal and something foul, like meat left in the sun. The lights were out, and the only illumination came from my phone's flashlight. I walked past rows of what looked like abandoned hospital beds, their sheets yellow and stiff with age. The deeper I went, the more the hospital's groaning seemed to amplify, as if the walls themselves were screaming for me to turn back. I was getting close. Mireya's whispers grew louder, more frantic. My phone's light danced across a series of glass-fronted cabinets filled with preserved specimens and rusted surgical tools. And then, I saw it. At the very end of the hall, there was a door with a polished brass plate. The name etched into it sent a fresh wave of terror through my veins. It was the same name from my mother's chart, Dr. Alistair Finch. As I reached for the handle, a new sound cut through the silence. Not a whisper, but a heavy, deliberate footstep from somewhere behind me, echoing in the darkness.